Recording has started. Now, our last assignment, there was an input, then, okay, I think we give this a placeholder. The first input, then another input. Both of them, I said, the two of them should be of type number, so that you can only type number inside the two inputs. Second input, then a button, multiply, next a div. So when you click on this button multiply, it's going to get the value inside this first input, multiply it with this value inside the second input, and put the results here. I think that's the task, right? Abina.
Yes.
Okay. So if you press 6 here and we put 8 here, I'll click on multiply, then we will see 48 inside that div. Let's take things together. Let's do this together. Number one, I will add an event to this and click. Whenever I click on this button, or whenever a user clicks on this button, you want to call on a function. So you can call it multiply values or multiply values. You can give it any name of your choice. So meaning that I will go to my JavaScript and I will create a function called multiply values. So when a user clicks on this button, it's going to run the code inside this function. The first thing is I want to get what is inside this first input. So in order to do that, I will give this an ID. I can call this first, then so that I can now say when I click on this multiply values, let's just display what is inside first. I'll say alert first. Since we are dealing with an input, remember an input is an editable container, so it's going to be first dot value. Let's come again. We have two inputs. Now when a user clicks on this button, it's going to call on this function multiply values and run the codes here. What we are just doing is we are telling JavaScript to come to this input. We give this input an ID called first, and since an input is an editable container, it's going to be dot value. So we just say alert first dot values, that is alert what is inside first. Please, do you have any question before we proceed?
No.
Okay. So let's refresh and put a value here. Let's say I put 5 here. Then if I click on this, good, is alerting 5, meaning that we are able to get what is inside this first input. Let's do the same thing with the second input. So I'll give this an ID also. I can call this second. So I'll just say alert second dot value. So when a user clicks on this button, it will alert whatever the user types inside this second one. Let's go to the browser and refresh also. So this can be 4 and this can be 8. So when a user clicks on this, this is 8 because we asked it to alert what is inside the second one. Next, we want to multiply these two values together. So we can say maybe first dot value multiply by second dot value. First dot value multiply by second dot value. So this will get whatever is inside this first and multiply it with whatever is inside this second. Any questions so far? Any questions so far, please? Are we getting it?
The second aspect, I mean the second the value, I mean the first dot value, let's explain now.
Sir?
The first dot value and the
Yes,
second value. I'm a bit confused about that.
The ID here is first. The ID of this input is first. So So, and since an input is an editable container, remember at the beginning of our training, I talked about editable containers. And uneditable containers. I said that editable containers are containers that you can edit by default. That is, users can fill them, users can change what is inside them. An input is an example. If I have an input like this, a user can change what is inside this input or can type values there. This is an input is an edit because a user can input things inside. Another example of editable container that I discussed with us was text area. Text, because a user can also type things inside. So I now said whenever you are dealing with editable container, you use value, the ID dot value, to get what is inside it. But whenever you are dealing with uneditable containers, you use inner text or inner HTML. So, and I told us example of uneditable containers are div. That is, a user cannot change what is inside this place. A user can only read it. User cannot change this hello world to something else. So by default, you can't change the value or you can't change what is inside uneditable containers. And in that case, you use inner text or inner HTML. But the reason we are using .value here is because this is an input. You just call on the ID .value. We give this first. You can give it any ID of your choice. Same thing here. This is an input, is an editable container, and we decide to name it to give it an ID of second. We can give it any ID of our choice. So when we now click on this button, it's going to run the codes inside this script. That is, it will get whatever is inside this first .value. That is, whatever the user types here, multiply it with whatever the user types here, then alert the results. Do you understand, sir?
Yes, sir. I understand better now.
Okay, alright, sir. Let's proceed. But then, our interest is not to alert it. No. Our interest is to place it inside this div. So let's do that together. Instead of alerting it, we are not going to alert it. Instead, we want to put that result inside this div. So instead of saying alert, we just remove this. Then we're going to say we give this div an ID. You can give it any ID of your choice. You can call it ID of display. You can give it any ID of your choice. So here the ID is display. So since a div is an uneditable container, a div is an uneditable container, so we are not going to use .value. Instead, we will use inner text or inner HTML. You can use any of them. Inner text equals to this. So I'm saying that multiply these two together and set it as this inner text of display. So it's going to place it here. It's going to multiply this with this. Then the result now will be set as the inner text of this div. The ID is display. So we are saying display dot inner text, the text inside it. Let it be whatever the result of this is. Please, do we understand?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay, alright, sir. Thank you, ma. Thank you, sir. Thank you, ma. Okay, let's do this together. 9. Boom, 36. Let's do another one. 7. So we've been able to do that 1. Next, let's do addition and let's look at a problem together. We want to look at addition. Now instead of multiplying it, let's decide to use plus and let's look at what this will cause. Six times 3, the result should be 18, but then this is history. Now what's going on?
Hello, sir.
Yes, ma'am.
Hello, sir.
Oh,
Someone has indicated that he wants to join the class.
okay, okay, okay. Thank you. I've added them. Thank you. Okay. Let's proceed. We decided to change this from multiplication to addition, and then on running it on the browser, we have 6 3. What's going on? Note, whenever you are getting anything from input, or whenever you are using anything dot value, if I'm getting something from input or text area or from select, I will use dot value since they are editable containers. Whenever I'm getting anything from input, it's always a string. Always a string. Despite the fact that this is type number, it is actually a string. Anything coming from an input is a string. Anything coming from a div also is a string. In fact, anything coming from your tags, maybe your p tag, all of this is a string. If I give this an ID, let's say paragraph, if I give this an ID called paragraph, and I say paragraph dot inner text, of course I'm going to use inner text. I won't use value because p is an uneditable container. So if I say paragraph dot inner text is a string, like whatever you are getting like this by saying calling on id dot value or dot inner text or dot inner html, JavaScript will always treat them as strings. Please, that is very important. JavaScript will always treat them as strings. So these things, the value here and the value here, they are treated as strings, and that is why JavaScript is using this plus sign to concatenate them together. Remember, we discussed in one of our classes that whenever this plus sign sees a string, it concatenates. So because this is actually a string and this is also a string, then this plus sign will concatenate them together instead of adding them, because whatever is coming from an input like this is a string. Please, do we have any question? Do we understand the explanation?
Yes,
Don't
sir.
be unsure. Yes, yes.
Okay. All right. Thank you. So let's proceed. You don't have any problem with minus. Minus will work fine. It's going to subtract them, but this plus sign is the it will concatenate them because it sees everything. It sees this as a string, and it sees this as a string. Then how then do we solve this problem? What if I actually want to add them together, not to concatenate? So to do that, I can convert each of them to number. I can convert this to number. What we are just doing here is get whatever is inside first and convert it to number. Don't worry, if you don't get it, I will write it in the simpler ways now. So get whatever is inside this number function, we convert this to number. This number function, we convert it to number. Then this plus I can now add them together. Now, if this is confusing, let's take it like this. Let's var a equals to first dot value. First dot value, we get whatever is inside this place and set the value of variable a. But a is a string, Abby now.
Yes, yes,
A
yes.
is a string because whatever is coming from an input is always a string. So we need to find a way of converting a to number. So we can say variable b equals to number a. So this will now convert that variable a to number. If let's assume the user typed 5 here, at this place it's going to look like this because it's a string. But at this place, it will turn to like this. It will turn to number 5. It will just convert it from string to number. That is the work of this number function. It will convert it from a string to a number. So we've gotten that of the first one. Let's do the same thing with the second one. Variable c equals to second dot value then variable d equals to number c. So again, this we get whatever is inside second, then here we are converting that to a number. Lastly, you can now say display dot inner text equals to b times d. B times d. We are on sorry, plus, we are using plus. B plus d. B plus d. So you know this is a number and this is also a number, then this will add them together. So instead of writing all of this, I can shorten this to a single line. So whichever you find easier to understand, whichever one. This just says just whatever is inside this place, convert it to number, plus get whatever is inside this place, convert it to number. Since both of them are now number, this is a number and this is also a number, then this plus sign we add them and it's not going to concatenate since it's dealing with two numbers. Please, do we understand?
Yes, sir.
Who is lost? Please, can we move on? Please, if you are not getting it, can you please signify? Check out tẹ̀síwájú.
Yes, let's move on.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Next is we can still write this same code in another way. The reason I'm showing all of this is that so that you can see some of the options available, some of those things you can do. So you can still write the same code in another way. And I'll be introducing something called eval. Eval is an inbuilt function. Eval is an inbuilt function. What eval does is that, look at this. I will do something. Let me comment everything. Let's focus on this eval. If I say alert 6 plus 8, what do you think this will give us?
It will give us 6 plus 8.
Good. It will give us 6 plus 8. It's not going to give us 6 8s. No. It's not going to give us 14. No. It will just give us 6 plus 8. This because all of these things, all of this are in quotes, like everything together. It will just alert it like this. This is different from saying alert 6 plus 8. This will give us 6 8s. Because this plus sign, we concatenate them together. This is a string and this is another string. This plus sign, we concatenate them together. But in this case, all of these things are they are inside that string. Like this plus sign will just be seen as ordinary string. It's not going to be seen as plus. It's just be seen as ordinary string. And this is different from alert 6 plus 8. This one will give us 14. This will give you 6 plus 8. This will give you 6 8. And this will give you 14. Any question?
No question yet.
No.
Okay. Now, you now see what eval does is that this thing, instead of this to give you, let's run it so that you see the results. Instead of this to give you 6 plus 8, eval will now evaluate it mathematically. 6 plus 8. Eval will evaluate this mathematically. So if I write the same thing, but just by placing this in eval, like this, just by placing this inside eval, it will evaluate it mathematically such that it will still give you 14. Whatever you put here, let's say minus 4 times 2, anything. Whatever you put here, this eval will help you to evaluate it mathematically so that you have the results in mathematics. So if you do all of this now, the result is 6. Any question?
No question. That's gotten.
Okay, please keep this in mind. You will need this for your assignment. Let's move on. I'm just showing you some of those things you can use. Now let's now go to, we've done the last assignment. We've seen how to use the multiplication, and we've also seen the peculiarity of the plus sign. And I also told us that whatever you are getting from HTML like this, whether using inner text or inner HTML or value, all of them will always bring string. They will always give you string. So you need to find a way of converting them to number. If you want to plus, add them together. If you want to add them, you need to find a way. So this is one way of doing that. Now, to the main thing we want to do today, we want to look at local and global variable. Local and global variable. So I would delete all of these things and focus on today's class. Local and global variables. So we've dealt with function. I'll just say this is my func. Don't worry, I will talk about Eva again when I'm done with the whole class. I will bring it up again and discuss it again. Just to remind us. Now, this is a function. A variable can either be a local one or a global one. The difference between the two of them is that whenever you create a variable, outside functions is a global variable. This A is a global variable. But whenever you create a variable inside a function, this here is a local variable. Local variable, let me just write it there. Local, why this is global. Local variables are created within functions, and that means they can only be used within that function. So this variable B, can only be used within this function. I can't use it outside the function. What does that mean? Imagine I have this. Imagine I say alert B. Then this is throw back an error. It's going to tell me B is not defined. If I run it and go to the console, you see the error. B is not defined. That's because B is a local variable and you cannot use it outside this function. Now let's create two buttons and click. I'll say colon my func. I'll say first button. So when the user clicks on this button, of course you will agree with me that it's going to run the codes within this function. So this alert B, I will just cut it and bring it here. So when the user clicks on this button, it will run the codes inside this function. It will create a variable called B and it will alert B. So because we are using this B within this function, it's going to work fine. Please, do we have any question? So when you click on it now, it will alert B. This B is a local variable. Let's create another button. And I'll say on click, I'll call this second func. I'll say second button. So when the user clicks on this button, I want to call on a function called second func. So let's create the function together. So when the user clicks on this, I want to run the codes inside this place. Now if I say alert B, this will not work. Again, B is a local variable to this function. So I can't use it inside another function. I hope you get the understanding of local variables. Show you what. This will not work. Let's run it on the browser. If I click on this, it's throwing back an error. Charlie, tẹ̀síwájú.
Yes, sir.
Alright, thank you, sir. Let's now go to global variables and see how they work. Global variables are created outside functions, outside all functions. So if I create a variable here, this is a global variable, and you can use a global variable anywhere, meaning that I can use it inside this function, and I can use it inside this function, and I can use it out here. If I say alert A, so that this is not so back. If I say alert A, then it's going to alert 3. So alert 3. That's because A is a global variable. If I come here again and say B times A, this will give me 2 times 3, which is 6. Because A is a global variable, you can use it anywhere. So let's click on this button. 6. And also, if I come to this place and I say alert A, this will give me 3. It's going to give me 3. That's because A is a global variable. I can use it anywhere. So let's refresh this page. Do we understand how global variables work?
Yes.
Can we move on?
Yes.
Okay. Because of our time, let's continue with this. We are not done with global and local variables yet, but this is just the basic of that. Next is, look at how this little thing that I just explained, how it's going to affect our code, the influence of this little thing on our code. That's the next thing we want to check now. The effect of local and global variables on our code. I'll do something. I'll say A equals to, let's say A plus equals to 4. I'll remove this one from now. I'll remove this one from now. So when I run this code and I click on this button, A plus equals to 4. You know this is the same thing as saying A equals to A plus 4, Abi? Abi now?
Yes.
Can we hear me?
Yes, sir. We can hear you.
Yes, we can.
Okay, alright. So you know this is the same thing as saying A equals to A plus 4. That is, get the initial value of A, add 4 to it, and set it back as the new value of A, so that A will now be 7. But this is just a shorter way of writing that. So if I say alert A, this will alert 7. Refresh. Click on this alert 7. Now, if I click on this button again, you will not be surprised at what you're going to see. 11. Wow, why is it like this? If I click on it again, you see 15. 19. What's going on? Why is it like this? Before explaining why it's like that, I will just cut this variable and place it here. I will cut this and place and run the same code. Like, just run it on the browser now and see the difference. 7. If I click on it again, I'll still see 7. If I click on it again, I'll see 7. So what's going on? Just by taking this from this place to this place, we have different results. Now let's not go into how the browser, how does it store local variables and how does it store global variables. That's the next thing I want to check now. How does JavaScript store global variables and how does it store local variables? You see, let's first focus on global variables now. When you run this code on the browser, what JavaScript is going to do is, your code runs from the top to the bottom, Abby. So JavaScript will read line 1 first, then to line 2, to line 3, line 4, line 5, line 6. Now when it gets to this place, it's not going to call on this function. It's not. That's because you are yet to click on this button. I'm talking about when you load this on the browser the first time, just now. I'm talking about this present state. Just by refreshing this now, this is what happens. It's going to start reading this code from the top. When it gets here, it's not going to call on this function because you are yet to click on this button. It will continue reading. Read this, read this, read this. Now, when it gets to this place, it will go to its memory and create a container. Remember, variable is a container. And create a container, then label that container A. Just will go to its memory and create a container, then to label that container A. Then it will insert 3 in that container. On getting to this place, it will only store the name of function. JavaScript does not run the codes inside functions. It only stores the names of functions. It will only store the name and ignore everything in this function. I come again. When it gets to this place, it will only store the name of this function and ignores every other thing inside the function. Then it continues reading. It will read everything till it's done, till it gets to this place. When it is now done, then when you click on this button, it's now going to run the code. That's when it now come back to this place and run the code inside that function. Since it has already stored the name, it knows that there is a function somewhere called myfunc. So when you click on this button now, it's going to say, oh, I know I have a function called myfunc. Let me go and run the codes inside that function. So it comes here and run the codes there. So let's see how it handles it. So it's going to say a, I told you this is the same thing as saying a equals to a plus 4. It's going to say, oh, I have a container in my memory called a. The value of that container is 3. 3 plus 4, 7. Then it will now set it back, meaning that what is inside that container will change from 3 to 7. Then it will alert A, meaning it will alert 7. Any question to that part before I move on?
Please, sir, can you recap that aspect?
Okay, let's go again. When you run this page on the browser, let me write this in full. Let me write this in full like this. Let's just leave it like this. When you run this page on the browser the first time, meaning that when I save this and I say right click, open in browser, I'm running it on the browser now. What JavaScript is going to do, what goes on at the background is that the browser starts reading codes from the top to the bottom. It starts from line 1 to line 2 to line 3, 4, 5, 6. Now, on get to this place, it's just reads this. This there's an event here called onClick. So meaning that it's not going to do this until you click on this button. So it's going to ignore this JavaScript codes. Then it continues, reads this. Now, when it gets to this place, variable a equals to 3. Variable a, I told you that this word var is going to create a container for you. Then you are labeling that container a. Then we are inserting 3 in that container. Now
Yes.
Meaning that the container has already been created immediately you run this page on the browser. That's the most important thing here. The container is created once you run that page. Once you run this page on the browser, the container is created because it will read this code. Do you understand?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Okay. Now when it gets to this place, it's going to see my func. It will only store the name. JavaScript does not run the codes inside function until you call on that function. And because we are here to call on this function, it will just store the name in memory and ignore everything in that function. So it's not going to see these codes, all these things. It's not going to see it. I'm talking about the first time we run this on the browser like this, the way it is now, is yet to know what is inside this function. It only knows that I have a function called my func, but it does not know the content of that function. Do we understand? Showing you
Yes,
well.
sir.
Okay. Next, it's not going to continue with his journey. If there's anything outside there, let's say I have alert hello, it will do this. It's going to do this and do everything till it gets to the end of your page. Now, if I want, let's go to the browser now and refresh. So that's why you have this alert hello. You have this alert hello because it's going to start from the top. Read, and get to this place, it create a container. And get to this place, it will only store the name and ignore everything there. Then it will alert hello till it gets to the end of the HTML file. Next thing is this. Let me remove this alert hello for now. Sorry, I'm copying. Please, I need to take water, please. Let's move on. Next is when I now click on this button, well, when a user clicks on this button now, you know, JavaScript knows that there is a function called myFunc, even though it doesn't know what is inside that function. But it knows that, oh, I have a function called myFunc. Abi now?
Yes.
Okay, thank you, sir. So when the user now clicks on this button, it's now going to say, oh, go to that function called myFunc and run the codes inside that function. So that will make it to come here and run all the codes within that function. So what do we have inside this function? We have this line. This line says a equals to a plus 4. That is, get the initial value of a. Remember, when you loaded the page the very first time, it has already created this container for you called a. It knows that there's a container called a, and it also knows that the value inside that container is 3. I've been now. It knows that the value inside that container is 3, that there's a container called a, and the value inside is 3. So when you now when you click on this button, it's going to run the codes here, and that says a equals to a plus 4. That is, get what is inside a, add 4 to it, and set it back inside a. So what is inside this container now will no longer be 3, but it will now be 7. So when you say alert a, this will alert 7. Any question?
No, sir.
Okay, so let's move on. When you click on this button again, it's going to run all the codes inside this space again. So what it's going to do is that it's going to say, what do we have inside A? Remember, we now have 7 inside A, not 3. The first time we clicked on it, the value inside the container changed from 3 to 7. So when you click on this button the second time now, it's now going to ask itself, what do I have inside A? I have 7 inside A. 7 plus 4, 11. So it's going to set it back as the value of A. So A will now be 11. When you click on this button again, it's going to run all these codes again. That is, get what is inside A, which is 11. Add 4 to it, making 15, and set it back inside A. So we will now have 15 inside A. When you click on this button again, it's going to run all this code again. Get what it's inside A, which is 15. Add 4 to it, making 19. Set it back. Do we understand? So each time you click on it, you keep getting the initial value, add 4 to it, and set it back. Show you what. It's still the same.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
It's still the same container. You are only changing what is inside that container. We are still referring to the same container. We are only changing what is inside the container. Can we move to local variables now? Who doesn't understand the explanation? Please, this is important. Please, who doesn't understand this explanation? Okay, let's move on. Next is, I will take this one from this place and make it a local variable, and let's see how that affects our codes. When you run this page, it's going to read line 1, 2, 3, 4. It's going to continue reading. Of course, when it gets to this place, it's not going to run this. It won't. It will just go to the next one again. Now, when it gets to this place, it will only store the name of the function and continue its journey. So, meaning at the end of the day, you will not see anything on the browser. If I load this now, you won't see anything on the browser. But note, there is no, JavaScript does not know that there's any container called A, because this container was created inside this function, and since we are here to call on this function, JavaScript does not know that there's any container called A. Let's come again. When you load this page on the browser, it will start from the top. Read this, read. When it gets to this function, it only stores the name of the function, but it will ignore everything inside that function. Then it continues reading till it gets to the end. Now, when you now click on this button, it's going to run all the codes here. And what it's going to do is that it will now see this line. That's when it will see this line 13 that says variable A equals 3. So that's when it's going to create a container called A. Remember, this word VAR means create a container. So that's when it's going to create a container called A. Then it will insert 3 inside that container. When it gets to this place, it will now say, oh, bring the value inside that container, which is 3, add 4 to it, making 7, and set it back. So the value inside this container will now change from 3 to 7. So when you say alert A, it will alert 7. That's fine. Now, when I click on this button again, which is the second time, it's going to run all these codes again, meaning that it's going to see this VAR again. And VAR means create a container. So it's going to create a new container, then label it A, then insert 3. Meaning we now have 2 containers with the same label A. Are we getting it? Show you what.
Yes, sir.
If you are lost, say I'm lost.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
I'm lost.
Okay, let's take it again. When you make this a local variable like this, it's going to start from the top. Read this, read this, read this, read this. Yes, only save the name of the function. It will ignore everything inside this place till it gets to the end. Then, when you click on this button, it's going to run the codes here. That means it's going to see this line var A equals 3. And this word VAR means create a container for me. So it's going to create a container and label it A. Then it inserts 3 inside that container. This means get the initial value inside that container, which is the initial value of A, which is 3. Add 4 to it, making 7, and set it back. So what we now have 7 inside this container. Then when you say alert A, it will alert 7. That's fine. When you now click on this button again, which is the second time, it means that it's going to rerun all these codes. That means it's going to see this var a equals to 3 again. This var we make it to create a new container which is different from the initial container. Then it will label that container a, meaning that we now have two containers with the same label a. Then it will insert 3 inside it. Since you are creating a new one, it will assume that the old one is obsolete. Instead, it will now, once you now call on a, it will start using the new one. So when you say a plus 4, that becomes 3 plus 4, making 7. So it's going to set it as a and alert a 7 again. When you click on this button again, it's going to run all these codes again. Meaning, if you see this line again, this var means create a new container, label it a, insert 3. So since you now have another container again, this will replace the last one. The former one becomes redundant, like you are not using it for anything, so it will just assume it's useless. Then a plus 4 making 7, then a becomes 7, alert a. Any question? If you don't understand this explanation, give me 1 minute now, you will understand it. If I run this code, what will I see? If I run this code, what will I see? Those are we together?
5.
5, good. 5, thank you, sir. 5. How many containers do I have here?
One.
How many containers do we have?
1.
1, good, thank you, sir.
1.
We only have 1 container. We are only changing the value, what is inside that single container. We only change it from 4 to 5, but it is still just 1 container. Now, if I run this, what will I see? If I run this, what will I see?
You still see 5, sir.
We still see 5. But now we have 2 containers. This var will create a container a and it will label it. It creates a container, it will label it a, insert 4. This line we create another container, it will label it a and it inserts 5. Meaning we now have 2 containers with the same label, both of them with a as their label. So, but then, because this is the most recent one, whenever you call on a, it's going to use the most recent one, meaning that this one now is now redundant. It's just doing nothing in our code. That's the exact thing that will happen here. This is exactly that happens here. When you click on this button, it will run all these codes. It will create a container in memory. Let me write it out. Let's say in memory it will create a container and it will label it a. It will insert 3 inside it. Then a equals to a plus 4. Okay, to now change what is inside that container to 3 plus 4, making 7. So container a, we now have 7 inside it. When you say alert a, it will alert 7. When you click on this button again, it's going to run all these codes again, meaning that it will see this line again. It will create another container, container a. It will insert 3 inside it again. Then once you now call on a plus 4, since you now have a new container, it's going to use the value of the new container, which is 3 plus 4, making 7. Then a will now be 7. Then it will alert a, which is 7. When I click on it again, it's going to do the same thing again. Container A, because since it's going to run this line, variable A is 3. Then 3 plus 4, 7, alert A. Any question? That is different from this. In this case, you only have one container. So when you click on this button, it will just go to that container and change the value inside it to 7. So alert A, this will alert 7. When you click on this button again, it's going to run all these codes, meaning go and get the value inside that container. Since we now have 7 in it, it becomes 7 plus 4, making 11. A equals to 11, alert A, which is 11. When you click on this button again, it will run all these codes. A plus 4, 11 plus 4, 15, A is 15, alert 15. So do we now understand how local and global variables work? Tani kò yé o, so that we can go over it again. Now, if you understand it, we are getting close to the end of today's class. If you understand this very well, let me explain the eval keyword again, since you will need it for the assignments. We need it for the assignment. Let me explain the eval keyword again. The way eval keyword works is that is a keyword, is a function, eval function. If you have a string like this and you say 6 plus 4, this will give you 10. Of course, if I want to use alert to display it, this will give me 10. Alert 6 plus eval 6 plus 4. But without this eval keyword, this result will just have been 6 plus 4 as ordinary text. Now to our assignments. Here is the assignment. You want to build this calculator, but don't worry, you don't need to do everything here. You will do this 0. Your calculator will have 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and full stop and dots. I come again. Calculator we have 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and decimal points. It will also have plus, minus, multiplication, division, and equal sign. Then lastly, it will have this to clear the whole screen. If I click on this, it will clear the whole screen. So that's what you want to do. You want to be able to do things like this and press equal to, then it will give you the results. That's what you want to do. Something like 4, once press maybe anything. 4 times 7 equals to this. If you want to clear the whole screen, you can clear the whole screen. You don't need to add other things, don't worry for now. Let's take things step by step. Please, any question? Do you think you have any question around this? Do you have any question concerning the assignment? Please ensure you don't allow the assignments to pile up. Please, let's ensure that our assignments don't pile up. By God's grace, in our next class, we will stop here. We are not going to proceed to the next thing. We will stop around this function and ensure that we do enough tasks on it together before we move to the next thing. But we still stay on functions for a while. Do this, we are going to do tasks, do projects, and do a lot of things on it. Then when we are done, we move to the next thing. Question.
Can you explain the assignment again?
Is there any question? Okay, if there is no question, thank you for coming to class. I appreciate you. Have a lovely night rest. I'll send the recordings to us.
Thank you very much, Mr. Sai.
You're welcome,
Have
sir.
a nice day.
You're welcome, sir.
Thank you.